Thank you all for coming, and thank you for taking a little bit of your day to banter and discuss and ruminate on some pretty crazy shit that's going on. Rik and I thought it would be great to just open the doors to the community and sort of hear how everyone's doing and handling with the crazy shit. Already in this room alone, we have a massive, diverse swath of people experiencing the crisis in different ways. Rik and I have had some thoughts as well, but as always, we were going to turn this table onto you. But Rik, what are your thoughts so far on what's going on these days?
My thoughts is, first of all, when I see this, that we're all Robinson Crusoes for the moment, all on our island, and not with Friday, but on a Friday. Thank you for that. So we're all kind of locked down. A couple of us on a voluntary basis, a couple of us because we need to, because we were obliged to. We're all experiencing this isolation on one hand, and I think at the same time we've never been so connected as we've been in the last couple of days. So my idea is that if this is to continue for another couple of weeks, and it is most probably going to continue for at least a couple of weeks, that people are going to get out of this isolation in a rewired way. And as such, I'm a big believer that society is going to be rewired as well, that we're going to reboot society. Society has come to an absolute standstill. I heard on the news yesterday that there are 4 billion people for the moment in lockdown. That's half of the world's population locked down. We have a complete standstill of business, world, and society. I don't think that I hope that we're not going to reboot the world as it used to be. We're going to reboot a new world. Nobody of us knows exactly what that new world is going to be like. And what worries me most is that most companies have kind of decided to just freeze the old company in a kind of artificial coma for the next couple of weeks and months, in the hope they can wake up the patient and have then the patient be alive in that new world. And I fear that what they, first of all, are wrong about is that they are going to put the old business in a new world. So there will be no relevance for their business in the new world anymore, or not at least the same relevance. But what worries me most is that they missed the absolute opportunity right here and right now to rebuild their plane while it's on the ground. Many companies have been, and I've been guiding many companies about, you need to be ready for the day after tomorrow. And there's a new society on its way. And then in most of the cases, what companies told me was, Rik, we don't have the time or the opportunity to do something and to rebuild our plane because it's in the air. And it is quite impossible to reconstruct your plane while it's in the air. Now, all of our planes have been grounded and the whole universe have been grounded. So if companies don't take the opportunity right now to really reconstruct and re-engineer their businesses right here, right now, they're never going to do it. This is once in a lifetime. And instead of calling this a crisis, I would like to call this the Corona opportunity. That's... Sean wanted to say something.
Go on, jump in, my man.
Yeah, I'd love to agree with you, Rik, but I suspect the opposite will happen. Unfortunately.
On society, you expect that society is going to be the same?
I think society, well, my personal feeling is society as a whole and the leadership that exists today of society is so stupid that they will go back doing the exact same thing that they were doing a month ago. I hope not, I'm kind of hoping that what comes out of this is, for example, I'm putting together a podcast at the moment on the death of the office, and I'm kind of hoping that a lot of people who were told, that the job that they have, or the job that they're getting, or the job that they're doing, that cannot possibly be done remotely. Well, shocker. They've discovered it can be done remotely. So why the hell are we still commuting to the office every day? And I'm really hoping that, both from a personal perspective and a work perspective and a planet perspective, that people recognize that spending 2 hours a day in the car, and do the math, 2 hours a day in the car is 450 hours a year commuting. That's 56 fucking days, excuse my French, in the car.
You're welcome.
But also the impact that you have on the planet while you're in the car,
Exactly. And you get a lot of people say, yeah, but I take the train, and I get, I listen to a podcast when I'm in the car, or it's my time to prepare myself for work. Well, I've been working remotely for 6 years. My time preparing for work is get up, have a cup of coffee, have breakfast with my family, work out, and then by the time I'm done all that, it's 8:30, time to work. It's a totally different life.
We get you pretty clear. I mean, it sounds like you think quite the opposite, that there should be not regression, but a resurgence of remote working that allows for a greater flexibility, because the other is a waste of time. So that's a good point. I think Katrien also wanted to add to that. So I'm going to jump to Katrien in a second, and then we'll come back to you.
Yeah, well, I agree with governmental leadership is going to be even worse, I'm afraid. If you see in Belgium what is happening behind the scenes, it's horrific. But I think this crisis could be a very good opportunity for bottom-up leadership. And I was happy to witness the maker community, which started with 5 people. And in a week time, there were 1,000 people on a Slack community getting together, finding solutions. And after a week and a half, it was the government who was listening and asking questions to the community. The government is now being assisted by scientists who are actually called the new premier of our country. So I think this is the greatest opportunity for us, I hope.
Yeah, we hear the word hope quite a lot. You were mentioning hope, Katrien is mentioning the word hope. What could be in between us and hope? How could we turn this idea into more than just hoping?
Another word, action.
Action, yeah.
I mean, I hate to be devil's advocate, but I don't hate. I love being devil's advocate.
Of course you do.
I think what we might actually see at if you can call it an end to the crazy shit that's going on, I think what we might actually hopefully see is something very similar to what we were going in, but also with some extremely stark differences. And that's just, marketing speak for, you might end up seeing a resurgence of this I can work from anywhere kind of mentality. And what I'm bringing it closer to like a business perspective, what I'm thinking here is that there's a unique opportunity for companies to start thinking, acting, and moving as fast as they were claiming to be.
Yeah.
I think the day after, the start with why, for example, is a good example. But I mean, there's also elements of like, usually what I was seeing in a lot of companies is they would, once you become successful enough, then you play with a little lab on the side. You have some startups that make some cool toys for you. And then maybe you buy into that, maybe you don't, but you have some people just playing around. That speed, that time to market kind of approach, I would expect and hope companies to start behaving more like tomorrow. There might not be a tomorrow. How many of you guys expected the government to say at 6:00 tonight, you guys are shutting down? There were businesses and restaurants and people who love marijuana in the Netherlands that were just shitting themselves because the government was like, the doors are closed at 6. Nobody knew that. And can you imagine the shock? How could we predict that? And in the face of the unpredictable, how do you plan to still come out alive after the craziness?
Yeah.
And I think that's the challenge we need to see. So that's why I think that we'll see something very similar to what we had coming into it, but hopefully completely different. Namely, business processes won't radically shift and change. Companies will still be companies, but how they move, how they decide, how they think should, I think, shift.
Yeah, but what you notice, and I'm involved in a couple of companies for the moment, helping them through this, what was called a crisis and is being seen as an opportunity. One of the companies is a manufacturing company where the cycle of introducing a new product was 18 months. 18 months. Now, all of a sudden, they have been able to launch a new product in 3 weeks' time, all of a sudden, because of the sense of urgency, that's one, but also by working from remote places, because decision-making goes way faster. Meetings are way shorter. So that company now has decided, so the normal life cycle for a new product was 36 days. They now turned that into a new process that they are now following of 36 weeks for a new product, 6 sprints of 6 weeks. So instead of launching one new product every 18 months, now they're capable of launching 10 products in that same 18 months, of which they say, yeah, maybe 7 of the products don't work and then we stop them, but maybe there's 3 products that really are right into the market and hit the market. Then at least we've got 3 products in the marketplace in that 18 months. And in the classical 18 months, it would be all or nothing. But the fact that they knew that for so long, and now all of a sudden they realize it. So what I think is that companies are going to start to realize more and more that by organizing work in a different way, there's return on investment in time, as you already mentioned, the return on investment but there's also return on investment in how many products can we bring to the marketplace. I know another company that realizes that, hey, we don't need that much office space anymore. So there is return on investment. And I think that companies is in the end, it's about what does it bring to me, bottom line. And if they see the result of this new way of working in the bottom line as well, I think that we might stand a chance that at least this is going to continue. And as a side effect, that has an effect on people's way of living and on the planet, that's a nice side effect for companies.
Now, you mentioned the impact on people's way of living. Sean, I'll come to you in just a second. I think Suyin, actually, you made a comment about globalization. I think it's an interesting one, seeing as a man dear to my origins, Marshall McLuhan, wrote The Global Village, and the notion that through connectivity, we basically become, and I'm paraphrasing terribly here, we become closer to people at the other side of the world. It's, in chaos theory's perspective, it's like a butterfly flaps its wings on one side and then causes a torrent on the other side. Like, now we know that when you do something here, other shit will happen on the other side of the world. So the notion of globalization becomes even more acute when looking at these kind of situations, especially since people are online more than anything else. Verizon, Comcast in the States alone saw like a 50% bump in traffic alone the first week and a half afterwards. But Suyin, you mentioned the notion of globalization and its impact on it. What were you thinking about?
Well, the thing is, are we all going to see that maybe people are getting afraid of the fact that, or pointing at globalization that brought this virus here? Or are we understanding that being and thinking on a global way, which is my perspective, will solve this much quicker, instead of what we did, I think, during the whole of February, was thinking that China send this to us, etc. We didn't take them serious. But what if we just take the whole world serious and we beat this virus all together, but not this virus, but like our world, thinking about it globally? Because I see a lot of people now saying, okay, we have to, and of course we have to help all the companies which are very close with us now in to help them survive. But I think we should not forget that globalization can bring us a lot. So I'm wondering what you guys are thinking about it.
Rik and I
want to go first?
The notion that I think on a globalization to a certain extent is ultimately what we're, I think, starting to see through interconnectivity, through like literally being able to pick up the phone and call someone on the other side of the world. The notion of proximity, of distance, becomes almost obsolete. Literally, we have people from all over the world right now on this call, which is cool. But I think more in line with what you were talking about, I think having a species level understanding of us as humans is starting to take shape. I'm hoping. And so what we're seeing basically is that this virus is making us all equal. It's the kind of great equalizer that's telling everyone, wait a minute, we might need to think a little bit bigger. And environmentalists would try to say the same thing, where you get a whole swath of people focused about closer to nature, more understanding of our species kind of thing. That would be saying this, but they'd be taken in doses. Now it's the entire world. You can't open up a newspaper, an app, or anything without any email or mention of COVID anywhere in any country and in any language. And I think that notion speaks to the benefits of globalization, because it's making us realize that we're all connected. Sean, you had something to say? And then
I did have something to say, but I'll comment on the last point, because I find it kind of funny that that this has been referred to by at least one individual as the Chinese flu.
Right.
But there have been
Mr. T.
Mr. T. But this is a purely political game. This isn't got anything to do with globalization. There's been, many major flu outbreaks, which are much bigger than this, that have origins in Mexico, the United States.
Not the Mexican flu.
No noise has ever been made out of those. No world leaders have gone up and said the US virus. He can take a walk on a short plank, as far as I'm concerned. But the point I was going to make is kind of going back to the beginning of this was, with globalization and companies, and do they revert to their, standard operating procedure? When does it become a case of, people before profit? Because we can already see it as a side effect of this, current crisis, that there are governments and economies that put profit before people. For an entire country, that the economy is more important to us than the people are. You saw it in the UK with let's do the herd immunity trick, because that'll keep the economy chugging along, because we can't afford this right now because Brexit's coming, and we're double screwed, right? And you see it in America, much less in Europe. I think the European nations are much more focused on the health and welfare of their citizens at the moment. But when do we get to that point where it becomes, who cares about how much profit you're making and how much money is going to the shareholders? And when does it come back to, we're people and human beings, and you're living your life?
Nice. There's a more human approach to doing business.
Yeah. Do we ever get there?
Yeah. Jami, you said that's a good point, man. We'll come back to you in a sec. Jami, you said that you had a question about decoupling and globalization.
Yeah, absolutely. Because if you look like till now, the globe is our market. Like you can create a service or product anywhere corner of the world. And if it drives the value, then the whole globe is the market, based on the potential value, what it is going to drive. But now, after this plague or pandemic, whatever way we are going to call, but after this, I think we will see only two nations, either China or US. They want to try to decouple in the way how they are going to promote the technologies, how they are going to promote the services, how they are going to do the funding, and how they are going to facilitate the operations for every aspect. So I'm thinking like it leads towards the decoupling of the globalizations towards few nations. This is my feeling.
Nice. It's an interesting approach to it. I think at the end of the day, what we might actually see, that decoupling actually will lead to a recoupling. But that's, yeah.
Yeah. Can I come back to that globalization?
Yeah, let's do that.
You're absolutely right, Michael, to say that there's huge globalization on the way we think, the way we connect. Absolutely right that the world has become a village because of connections, because of digital connections. But at the same time, I think that if we think about the complete standstill now of business and of supply chains, even for the moment, I think that when we reboot the world and we are going to reboot businesses, that we're going to think big. That is, we are connected, but we're going to start small. I think that the world economy as that big machinery, as we've known it for so many years, is not the way we're going to restart it. I don't say it's not going to end like that again, but I think that we will be obliged to start it on a smaller scale for one specific reason. Not every country is going to get out of this crisis at the same time. So we're going to see that local economies are going to start up without being able to immediately plug into a global economy. So by definition, and that's a strange situation. People are connected, we think globally, but I think that we will restart with local economies and even very local economies for plenty of reasons. And the most important reason is we can't restart that whole machinery just like that. So I urge companies for the moment to already start looking for local partners and to start building a local ecosystem and not that global ecosystem and plug into the usual global ecosystem, because that will be gone. And that will take months, even years, before it's at the same pace. So companies cannot wait for that moment. So they have to think local. So and that spread between how we think as people, acting and thinking very global, and at the same time those local economies, I wonder how that's going to influence our daily lives. I don't know. I think it's fascinating.
Yeah, totally agree. Thank you.
Yeah. But we all agree, I think, that we have to start local by definition. And I think that this is a huge opportunity, because local means closer to people, much more transparent, much more honest, much more authentic, and I think much more in tune with how people actually look at business or want to be treated by business.
I don't know. We'll come to you in just a sec. I think, but what is local today, though? Honestly, because look at this conversation. I
mean, if you look at products, again, I talk from experience. I'm involved in a company for the moment. Two of our suppliers, Italian suppliers, are not there anymore. They've gone bankrupt in the last couple of weeks.
Right.
Two of our major suppliers. we were looking at China, but we don't know when we can restart a supply chain with China, if ever. And certainly not in the first couple of weeks, in the first couple of days. Now, we found out that there is not even a source of that type of products that we need in the Netherlands or in Belgium. They used to be, but they're no longer there. So I think that this is an ideal opportunity to restart even that type of manufacturing companies on a local scale. They're not there yet, but if they were there, they would now have a huge opportunity to get connected in that new ecosystem. So I think that there are huge opportunities for new types of businesses. Actually, some old type of businesses that we've all forgotten about that can restart. And I think that as a consumer, and I look around now in this room, I think that as a consumer, we wouldn't mind to know that we buy not only local, but we buy locally produced products at the same time. And so maybe I'm a dreamer, but I think
it's okay to be a dreamer. But maybe it's a mindset shift. Maybe what we're looking at here is how do we, once the whole conversation here today is about what does the day after COVID actually look like? I mean, ruminating about the existing systems and structures is helpful to know where we'll go. But what does tomorrow actually look like when you don't know whether or not tomorrow will actually be? I want to go to Katrien. She made a comment. She raised her hand. If for all those new people joining us, feel free to raise your hand and pressing the button over here or so if you're on a desktop.
On your left, on the left side.
But join the conversation. Grab a drink, grab a coffee, grab a whatever. Katrien, love to hear from you.
Yeah, I just wanted to add another question. If you look at the curve of the diffusion of innovation, there's the innovators and the early adapters and then the early majority. I think now the late majority and the laggards are just hit right in the face. They just have to follow now and use technology. And I think it can go two ways. Either they turn into believers now, or they turn into more resistance, because there is also this distrust towards China, I hear. Can we trust China's state? Can we trust their technology? Can we trust their way of regulation? So is there enough time? It might seem strange to say, but will the crisis take long enough to turn them all into believers, or will they turn into more resistance?
But it's strange that you mention, Katrien, because a couple of weeks ago, we all hoped that this crisis would be a short one. And all of a sudden, we kind of hope that it's going to take long enough to really rewire governments and people and society. It's strange,
I mean, I don't
Michael,
know.
You don't agree? Yeah,
I kind of have I'm on the fence about that. So, Katrien, you mentioned trust. Is it possible for us to trust Chinese information or Russian information and whatnot? And what I think is interesting here is that there's been a sort of substrate in the tech community, at least, talking about trustless information exchanges, like security systems that are so inherently uncrackable, minus quantum computing, not the UN, that are so uncrackable, unbreakable that through, for example, I'm going to use the dreaded B word, the blockchain. When you see technologies out there that are rooted in a sense of trustless environment, it becomes moot whether or not you can trust information for people. What I think we might come close to is the notion that because information coming from humans is inherently has the potential to be inherently flawed, it behooves us to come up with systems and processes, or at least a baseline where trust doesn't become a thing. So whether or not you get information from China, from Russia, from you name it, wherever, it's irrelevant, because based on how the information is gathered, it's trustless. And so what I'm thinking we'll see here is technology will smack people in the face, smack the laggards, in the face, like you said,
Yeah.
force them to adapt faster. And those that have the approach, the mentality, the wherewithal to jump out of that airplane and jump out of off a cliff and build an airplane on the way down, like entrepreneurs, they say, those are the ones who will actually be able to succeed here.
Yeah.
So,
I love that picture. Jump from a cliff and build your plane while you're falling. Okay, yeah.
Entrepreneurs are people that will jump off a cliff and build an airplane on the way down, or build a parachute.
Yeah.
That's what I was referring to. So, like those people that have that certain level of risk tolerance, that can jump off without knowing how the end's going to be like, and then build something along the way down. I think those are the resourceful ones. Not necessarily a shift in resources, but rather resourcefulness. And I think that mindset shift that we're seeing here for the smart ones, they'll borrow from the technological understreams that we're seeing growing here. So, I mean, I agree and I disagree and everything. But Sean, you had your hand raised. What's up, man?
Yeah, Sean.
Well, about the comment that was made regarding trust and can we trust the information from China, and is that going to be a differentiator moving forward? Well, can we trust America? Did the Erasmus University just get I
mean, my Canadian brother over here. Canadians, we like to poke the bear.
Yeah,
we are known for poking bears.
Exactly, but did Erasmus just get $1 billion investment from the United States, which was originally intended for a pharmaceutical company in Germany that they tried to buy 3 weeks ago to get the vaccine for their use only? So who can you trust? Is it China that's the evil doer here, or are they just trying to?
This is where I think it might be an interesting approach. This is what we were talking about as well with Suyin. She mentioned it's this level of just being a person level understanding. Like you were suggesting, putting people before profit by looking at everyone else as another thinking, breathing meat sack hurtling through space on this tiny shit little marble that we've been blessed with the ability to think and breathe and whatever, if you don't believe we're a simulation. But the notion that we're a species, I think will take a greater hold here. And that mindset shift that you see afterwards will require those dinosaurs to find themselves quickly extinct or without a job pretty quickly.
Yeah, but we are a species that base its relationships on trust. I know you. You live across the street from me. You're Canadian. For some reason, I trust you. I don't know why, but
biggest mistake you ever made.
Yeah, and I trust other people that I do business with or I have relationships with, that that they will do right by me because I do right by them, and that's how you build trust. And through this whole thing, we're seeing a breakdown of trust on multiple levels, from the leaders of the governments all the way down to the company that you're working for. You don't know if you're going to have a job.
Look like that.
Sorry?
What would tomorrow look like then? And I'm also, not just you, Sean, but I'm also opening the floor to Wen, to Joe, to Elisa, to Leonie, all you peeps in the room right now. Feel free to jump in. What does tomorrow look like then?
I think, trust is a big word to debate on and to discuss on. But there are a few fundamental aspects, like it's always 4 paradigms. What people want, what local markets supply, and what governments dictates on, and what capitalists wants. So these are 4 core paradigms which will drive everything. So I think we have to find a common platform in between these 4 paradigms, because always the capitalists who invest in companies, technology and services, whatever it is, they have some kind of notation back of their investment. At the same time, governments have a different kind of approach for their own sustenance and for their own legacy and excellence. And local markets always based on demand supply chain, but local people, it's always explicit and implicit factors.
Yes.
So I think
once you understand what you where the next stage needs to be, then it's always easy to try to clear path. But I'm curious to hear. Thanks, Jeff. Curious to hear what some other people here in the room think. Elisa, what does tomorrow after COVID look like for you?
I definitely also hope that there will be sufficiently of change, and I couldn't agree more with Rik that companies need to work locally. We had the same case now during the crisis. I have a product where I buy from Austria, Germany, Belgium, Netherlands, and from France. So I buy from a lot of countries. One of our suppliers in Belgium couldn't supply one of my products anymore for the production. But me, of course, I want my production to keep going. I don't want to stop. So there is, because I think it's working individually, having good contacts, and really working locally, and to find solutions there. Because my lawyers were told me I need to ask some indemnity from my Belgium supplier that can't supply me anymore. That is what lawyers tell me, that I need to be harsh and I need to get the money there, what clients are asking for me, because I'm late in delivery. But I don't believe in that. I believe in partnership work. And that's how I took it from there. And that's, for me, the only way to do it. And I really hope that more clients and more companies will look at that way after COVID, more in a partnership way, more in solidarity, and more we can do it together. And that's how we see it in my company. And I hope that that will also be the case tomorrow. Against all the advice one might get from big companies that do it the hard way, from lawyers, but I hear more and more that that's not the way to do it. And we also really believe in a local, working locally. We are a company that deliver a system to build halls in wood, and we deliver mostly abroad, so mostly in Germany, Austria, Switzerland, France, and so on. Yeah, and we work only with local partners to sell the halls. So we have everywhere in those countries, we have partners locally that will go to the client with us together to sell the hall, to sell the building. And we really strongly believe that that is the only way to be working regionally and locally, is to have partners everywhere. And that's really
maybe that's an interesting point. So that we thank you, Lisa. That's
absolutely.
It's a matter of working perspectives, or these people's quite creatively by hang on a second. We have a little bit of noise here. You can totally unmute yourself after. There you go. Power! No, I'm just kidding. Rik, what do you think about this sort of? It still talks a little bit to what Suyin was mentioning about the notion of globalization. Have we gone so global that now we're hyper local? And marketing bullshit aside, does this mean that we're inevitably going to just continue back on the same crap that we've done before? Like, that would piss me off. If we're all sent to our rooms and just told that, like, okay, go to your room, don't leave until you come back with a better idea, or the virus is gone and shit like that. And then you leave and you're like, okay, let's do the same thing we're doing before, guys. It worked, so let's do it now. Like, that would really piss me off if we just skipped all the opportunity we had to grow and push things. And as a trigger for change.
If COVID would end right now, and if we would go back to normal globally tomorrow, we would just reboot the old system. No doubt about that. If it continues for still a couple of weeks or even a couple of months, like we all think it's going to, we kind of realize for the moment it's going to take way longer than we ever thought or ever hoped. I think that it's not even a matter, do we want it, yes or no? Again, we won't come out of this crisis, every country at the same time. Some countries will be able to leave it faster and go back to normal way faster than the other countries or regions. But so that means that if you start and you can start a local economy, but if your local economy is embedded in a global economy and that global economy is not starting up yet, you can't start your local economy. So the only way to start your local economy is to start it locally. There's no other way to do it, purely from an economical point of view. And if you talk about trust, and I think that trust is a big issue. It was already a big issue before Corona, but it's now really becoming a big, big issue. I think that the answer to trust is about transparency. How can you get trust from people? How can you gain trust from your citizens as a government or from your customers as a company without being transparent? If you're not transparent, you can't gain trust. It's connected. And if you're too big and if you have too many steps in your whole value chain, there's only blockchain or being small. And I don't think that the world is, or that consumers are ready for blockchain for the moment. They will be one day, but for the moment, the only way to be transparent is to cut out middlemen. It's to cut out too many steps in between you and your product, and the product and how the product is being made, how it's being produced. It's about transparency. So I think there are two major reasons why the next global economy will be about quite a lot of local economies.
And I think from what I'm hearing from a lot of people here, the notion of transparency is extremely important. I read this Harvard Business Review article recently about operational risk, which the example they use, and I love it, is basically you're in a restaurant, identical restaurants. They both give you the exact same food. You get a plate of spaghetti or something, but one restaurant has basically just a closed off part to the kitchen, and they just hand you your food when they're done making it. The other one is an open kitchen. You see the details and the care they're putting into the actual process. Once you see what goes on behind the scenes, once you know more about the processes taking place, it gives people a better sense of value. They value the product a lot more as a consequence. And it's really interesting study that they did, where they basically measured people's perceived value based on how transparent the process is. Look at how our mail has changed in the last years already. We went from I sent you a letter last week to a track and trace that I can see every single waypoint that letter has gone. This radical transparency that companies are adopting, I think, will be the best way to add real significant value to how they deliver products and services, just by being transparent and using things like blockchain amongst just standard server technologies, allowing you just to open yourself up a little bit more to your audiences and share what's going on. Will dramatically improve people's trust levels and then encourage a stronger local, global community, I think.
Local.
Yeah. Local, yeah.
Local, yeah. Sean, you wanted to say something, yeah.
Yeah, I've got a question, because I think I agree with the whole local concept. In fact, I've made some notes here because this kind of plays into a startup I'm doing at the moment. But also if we flip it from product-focused companies where you're sourcing or you have suppliers or product that you need to get, and look at the services industry, does the opposite effect happen? That the services industry driven by this becomes hyper global, whereas, and what I mean is that the companies face the fact that they can source people to do the work that needs to be done from anywhere in the world, instead of having them in a chair at an office in Utrecht, for example. So, services economy, such in IT, consultancy, development, infrastructure, does this hyper globalize the services businesses?
It's a good question. What do you guys think? What's the rest of the
Wow, Sean, this I love this. I never thought about it like that, but I think you're absolutely right. So you see a kind of different movement, the manufacturing industry on one hand, or where it's about real products and real like food industry and all that stuff, and on the other hand, the services industry.
Well, I've been banging on about this for years, but it's difficult in the Netherlands because there's, unless you're in a startup land, there is resistance from big companies to do remote work, to have their entire workforce remote first. And I'm in technology, and I can find the people that I need to do things for clients in the Netherlands, in Canada, in Ecuador, in Italy, and they don't need to physically be at a client's office. Yet clients in the Netherlands often demand that an engineer or a developer be on site.
Is it a matter of control?
I think it's a matter of control, and what you have is a layer of middle management in almost every country or every company that where their only KPI that they can manage staff by is how many butts are in seats, and that's how they manage things. They're all here, so work must be done. If they're at home, they're not working. There is that prevalent attitude. But maybe this is a driver for, a company wants to outsource a project and they're going to go and find a vendor to do it for them, but that vendor is going to source resources from all over the world. Sorry, I hate using the word resources. I shouldn't have done that. But,
shame on you.
They're going to source. They're going to get people from all over the world.
Capital K, right? Great. Suyin, you had a comment, and Jami will come to you after.
Yeah, well, I think we will go much more to an economy where we have a lot of freelancers, and they will indeed come from anywhere. But I think we should not mistake with all the startups that are, as a main job, have getting money, and then they try to use the money, and then they realize, we were supposed to be entrepreneurs, and the money is gone. And I think if we do a counting of all the startups that starts, and yes, they have a lot of people working for them until the moment that all the money is gone, that they have to really make money themselves, and then they are gone. So I think when you have, let's not mistake, it's a bit not correct to say real entrepreneurs, but people really running a business, and let's not compare them with startups, because running a business is about, for me, the most important thing now is to keep my team. And of course, they don't have work now. And I'm happy to be in Belgium and that they can get some money from our government. But I hope to keep my team and to pay them. It's completely different than my role as a freelancer presenting. I don't have work. It's not that bad, but it's another ball game if you have a team that you have to pay every month. So I think there we have to, and also I wanted to comment on what is the day tomorrow going to look like. I think we should not all rethink what we are doing. If what you are doing and the way you are doing it is okay, then yes, get better at it, get that, the new stuff, what Rik was saying, that you cannot do while your plane is flying. It's on the ground, so you have time to do the new stuff. Do this, but don't start to rethink your business. I mean, if your vision and your mission is correct, it should not change because we are in a crisis, I think. I don't think that Rik traveling the world to give, for example, keynotes, why should he now talk in every single small village in Belgium? It's not going to work. They will be very interested, but they're not going to pay the same amounts of money for this. So it's another, you should not change everything. It's not because it's a crisis that suddenly we have to go like, okay, and let's completely all change our business.
I think you make some interesting points, but what if what it does is it challenges us to see beyond just the one thing we were doing? For example, Rik giving keynotes can be pieced out into different kinds of assets. Like even this, for example, I tried, but was not able to stream this on YouTube. But future broadcasts like this will definitely have their own streaming platforms. Will definitely have their own, like this will be turned eventually into snippets and conversations to share with the people that might not have been here. Like this stuff is being recorded, we're sharing, we're talking about it, we're going to share this with the wider community. It's going to turn into different kinds of ways for us to basically just, I think at the end of the day, for all of us to say, you know, hey, we're here. And we may have our own clear vision, but how that gets executed, how that really looks like, may indeed be completely different than what we are currently facing. And it's not completely different, but maybe it's like we understand the need to adopt new means of sharing ideas and information in such a way that technology will help empower us to do that to a wider audience. And so hyperlocal becomes actually the use and application of extremely globalized technologies.
What Suyin was saying about you shouldn't change, I fully agree. And I think that companies that were not, and Katrien at the beginning you showed why, companies that didn't have a clear why are going to go belly up in this Corona times or after it. I always said the why is ask yourself the question, what would my customers miss if I was not there? And I always ask, and Suyin, you know it, because Suyin has been my host for the day for a couple of times. I always ask the audience, who misses Thomas Cook? And I can tell you there might be a couple of hundred people in the room or a couple of thousand in the room. There's no hands in the air. Nobody misses them. And then I say, see, I rest my case. There's quite a lot of companies that we miss for the moment, but we don't miss them. Those are the companies that are going to be in trouble after COVID because we found out that we don't miss them. Why would we go and have a relationship with somebody that you don't miss when you have the opportunity to miss them or you're obliged to miss them? If you don't miss them, you have a problem. So companies that have to now think about what would my customers miss if I was not there, they're way too late.
Good points. I mean, I also want to be, just as a heads up, it's
yeah, there's a couple of heads up. Yeah,
well, 5 to 4. It's almost 4 o'clock. We're going to go to Katrien and anyone else that has any final closing thoughts.
There was there's another hands up as well. Yeah,
Jami, Katrien.
Yeah,
I think it's this crisis actually throws us back to the bare essence. We're all locked up in our house. For my case, this is me, my husband, and the 3 kids. One of them is also a risk patient, so we have to be double careful for him. So we're actually 24/7 with the bare essence of my existence on this at this moment. So the why question is the only question that pops up right now. And I think this is the crisis. Everyone is asking, why are we every day in a traffic jam? Why do we do this? Why do we do that? And I think Rik can use any platform he wants to, but it will still be the same. Why does he do it? He can change all the whats he wants to, but I think this is the very bare question that we have to ask ourselves. And from my point of view, professionally, I'm an advisor in STEM. This was the question I asked myself again. Why do we promote STEM to children and young people? And we're only focusing on what we do with STEM. But the question we have to ask is, why should we bother with STEM? And I think this is what we have to handle right now. And actually, I'm thankful for the crisis that I have time now to think about that and try to attract people who want to do this with me.
So the why becomes even more salient, even more important. That's really good. Thanks for that.
That's totally a point of maturity, because when we analyze more on why, then it extends us in different perspectives. So I totally agree with that. And at the same time, when we talk more, after crisis, we have to emphasize on local markets. But at that time, we also have to be very much aware that the scope of consumption will be also very lean and mean if we only target on local markets. Either it is a product-driven company or service-driven company, If we say like our emphasis is only on local markets, then the rate of consumption, the scope of consumption will be also very less. So I think like, I don't know whether, this is the way we have to struggle a bit, or there will be an opportunities where we can scale up as we did in good olden times before the crisis. So that time has to unfold.
Good points. Sean, you want to take us home, and then Rik wrap us up?
Yeah, my I'm not sure who it was just there. He said the S word, scale, and this is one for you, my Canadian friend. Where the mantra is, you got to scale up. You got to scale. You got to go get bags full of money and hire, and get customers and sell, and get big. Does that change now?
Michael?
Is anyone going to ask the question, why? Why are you running your business that way?
I think you should. But
Why?
I think you always should have. And for me, my biggest outtake for this whole thing is that the one thing that's constant is that shit changes. And that if we don't plan as though shit will always change in like the now, like we should start acting like, with a sense of urgency. Like we get comfortable in crap. I think if we don't start acting like that, then we're not gonna we are gonna have to change. We are gonna have to scale. Doesn't necessarily mean that you're changing your business model, you're changing your why, you're changing your core mantra. Scale means that you have the breadth and reach to be self-sustaining. And I think that notion of sustainability will become even more prevalent. As long as you act as though you need to build on the world that it is today, but knowing full well that it might be different tomorrow. Which at the end of the day means that we just need to be smarter, more time sensitive, act with a sense of urgency. We forget how fucking short life is. So
and also, like, for example, if your services are not being consumed, then you can't scale up. This scaling up is all about make your services more consumable for much bigger platforms across the seas. So if you have potential consumers across the seas, then there is a reason to scale up, because at the end, sustainability is the core mantra.
Nice. The great points all around. We are wrapping up, but I want to say a little nod to my amigo over here, the boss man. He just popped in. We are basically at the tail end of this discussion, but the question still remains, and I'm going to throw it to you because you came in here and just want to hear your point. What the fuck does tomorrow look like if we don't know what tomorrow will be like?
Use your imagination.
Yeah.
Not
Imagine.
a bad answer.
I call that. Suyin still knows it. I call that Cinderella, the Cinderella syndrome. If you watch you have kids, you watch a movie, the Disney movie. At one moment, the fairy godmother says to Cinderella, "You don't have to look at things as they are, but you have to look at things as they can become." That's what we need to do. Yeah. Don't look at it like they are, but look at them as they can become.
Yeah, and also I would add maybe just plan for the worst in case.
Yeah. Okay, I think that the major rewiring, and I hope of this major lockdown, is that our perspective, our notion of time and value is changing. I hope that, and I think it's happening. We look at time in a different way, and we look at values in a different way. And I hope it changes for good. If this lockdown is still a couple of weeks, and it will be a couple of weeks, I think we will come out and look at the world around us, time-wise and value-wise, in a different way.
Yeah.
Great closing. Anyone else want to jump in before we wrap up? We are good. We got some chats. People are chatting. This is a chatty conversation. Hallelujah. That's right, Suyin. Happy birthday, by the way, to your kid. Sean, thanks for joining us. Everyone else in here, Katrien, Jami, Lisa, Leonie, Hannah, the boss man, everyone. Thank you so much for your time.
It stands for bits of stock.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah.
I know, but I mean,
Thank you, guys.
Come on.
I'd say see you next time when we have a bar. Okay. Yeah.
Stay safe, stay happy, stay healthy, stay the fuck inside.
Yeah.
We'll see you guys real soon, and I'll post this this video in a little bit so you guys can follow back and tell everyone how awesome you are. And now I approve.
Thanks,
you guys.
for setting this
Bye-bye.
amazing platform. Thank you all.
Bye, guys.
Bye.
And then there was one.